What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and we're back with some more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. Today is going to be a subscriber battle between Triiari and Technozon01. So he's going to be playing as Clan Scryer using Ikit Claw, the new DLC Lord from the Prophet and the Warlock. And Triiari is going to be using his favorite race, the High Elves. And I'm quite interested to see what Triiari has kind of cooked up for this matchup. Triiari is a player that I do a lot of games with. I feature him a lot on the channel, and he takes his high elf play very seriously. He also thinks a lot about the matchups. So, like I said, I'm curious to see what he's come up with for this battle. And I have to say, I like what he's doing already. It's a very simple build. Straightforward front line, 4 spearman units. Let's go ahead and get the unit cards up so we can see for those of you who perhaps aren't familiar with what I'm talking about. He's got a strong sniping back line, 4 basic Sisters of Avalorn. They have that magic damage and fire damage attached to their ammunition, and just huge armor piercing values. They'll melt just about anything in the game. And then on the flanks, looks like 4 Lothern Sea Guard. For those of you who've never seen what those bad boys look like, we can check them out here. They're essentially spearmen with bows. Super value. Having them on the flanks is going to let them protect the flanks from any type of chariot-style shenanigans and large targets getting in the back and shutting down the all-important Sisters of Avalorn. And then there's a bit of insurance here against any type of artillery play, or maybe perhaps Hell Pit Abominations. We see the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. Switched into their anti-large single target variant, they can burst down most large targets quite easily. 380 range is nice, but against the Skaven also, their spread fire anti-infantry modes can be useful because the Skaven come in large numbers. They tend to blob up their infantry, and probably the biggest added benefit is that they greatly outrange the newly added Warplog Jezzails. So here we have the Regiment of Renown, the Natty Bubo Sharpshooters. Most importantly about these guys is that they have, they're basically invisible. So we can take a look at their unit card if we can mouse over it. They have Stalk and Snipe. So they can shoot while stalk, and they don't reveal themselves. All you can see is the trail of their fire, and that's going to give the Skaven some nice range here. That's 300 range, still being outranged by the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. And then 2 of the Plague Claw Catapults are going to be absolutely devastating against the elves in general. The Plague Claw Catapults are good against all 3 elf races, I find. And the range on this 400, I would probably be trying to target the Sisters of Avalorn and nuking them down one by one while sending forward all of these cheap. These are probably Skaven slaves, and they certainly are. Send forward the slaves. Send forward the clan rats with shields to absorb all that fire. Meanwhile, let the Plague Claw Catapults rain down. So there's a bit of a terrain issue here, it looks like. They might have a problem with line of sight. They're not going to have an issue firing and hitting their targets because they are catapults, but they will sometimes get blocked with line of sight thanks to all this weird terrain here. This map can be a little funny. No doubt they both kind of want to meet here in the center, and the front line favors the High Elves. Honestly, the back line favors the High Elves. But let's see what the lore choices are and the hero choices are for the Elves. So, a Lore of Light Mage here with just the Nets of Amnatok. Didn't need to bring, it's an easy thing to overlook, but it's the Exorcism. There are no undead on this battlefield, so that's not really going to be pertinent. It's a little bit of gold, perhaps could have saved. But the big deal here is Net of Amnatok. Net of Amnatok is going to let him tie down any large targets that perhaps are trying to flank, or any lords like Ikit Claw and a Doom Wheel, for instance, and then just absolutely nuke with the Sisters of Avalorn. Let's see if there's any other additional synergies here from Teclis. A second casting of the Net of Amnatok, interesting. Greater Arcane Conduit for that recharge rate. Shield of Sapphire and Wild Heart, as well as Kindle Flame. So anticipating getting some nice fire attacks off with Bound Fiery Convocation. Anytime he casts a spell, enemies are going to become weaker to fire, but every time he casts a spell, he also gets an increase to his power reserves and some damage resistance to all units. It only lasts a few seconds, but it's still a pretty valuable effect. And then the Potion of Troy, which heals him and gives him damage resistance, but it does set back his spell casting. So he's going to be up against Teclis, the man himself, or the elf himself, up against Ikit Claw. If we can get a nice side view here. Check this out. What a sweet model. But we need to go over his abilities. But before we get into that, because that's going to be quite time intensive, he also has the Teeth Breakers, the Rattling Gun Weapons teams. So another awesome Regiment of Renown. Kudos to this opponent here for taking the more unique, newer Regiment of Renown units. And let's go ahead and put it in standard speed. But the Rattling Gunners are a unit that I think a lot of people are scared to take. They're pretty costly and pretty fragile. Would be much better here if Triiari had taken Cavalry. They would find a home because they do have that kind of slowing effect, that suppression effect. They're anti-infantry, but their armor piercing is so high, their damage is so high, that they can be quite effective against Cavalry as well. So just some standard Skaven Slave Slingers here to shoot pebbles at people. More Clan Rats in the background. I think the Eagle Claw is going to start attempting to snipe out the catapults. The models here for the Skaven, they die very easily. So a couple shots into them, all they really have to do is get lucky and hit these catapults. The next thing you know, they're firing at a pretty reduced rate of effectiveness. Natty Boo Sharpshooters already teeing off on Teclis, and they're doing an absolute ton of damage. So we will have to slow-mo this after all. Otherwise, Teclis looks like he's going down, and he may have to pop a very early potion to protect himself from all of that damage. But let's go ahead and look at the Dwarf Thing Menace. The Doom Flayers, the Regiment of Renown, aside from their sick color scheme, that's a pretty cool shot in the background. They also have this ability here, the Best Defense. Whenever they charge into melee, they get a plus 24 to their armor stat. So they go up to 124. They sunder armor. That's kind of their special deal as a Regiment of Renown. And then we need to go over here and look at Ikit Claw, who looks like he's very wary of the nets that are possibly coming his way, as well as the possible Sisters of Avalorn fire. Their range is probably somewhere about right here at the moment, so they still need to close in just a bit to get onto Ikit Claw. So let's get close to him, see if we can pause the game, and we really need to take a second to look at his unit card because he has so many abilities, and they're all very impactful. So he causes terror on the Doom Wheel, that's important. Probably has a standard 15% missile resistance if I had to guess. Of course, he causes Encourage. He is a Ruins caster. He has the Musk of Fear, which happens every time he casts, reduces melee attack and leadership of all enemies. It's map wide. It's a pretty powerful effect. Warp Lightning here, very cost-effective spell, can generate a lot of kills over the course of a long battle. Howling Warp Gale, just in case Triiari had taken any flying units, you can lock them down and focus fire. Death Frenzy, something you can give to yourself or an ally for pretty cheap, and it just increases your damage, essentially. We have the Brass Orb. That's a bound item for Ikit, and it's an instant cast, which is pretty unique among these type of Vortex spells. It can disrupt a unit formation. It causes minor magical damage. Huge stationary area of effect. Good against armor, strong versus multiple units. So armored infantry blobs up. You drop this on them instantly. You have 3 charges on a 90-second cooldown. It lasts for 13 seconds. It's a pretty cool looking ability as well. Unlimited power. 50% miscast chance. That's pretty awful. But good power reserves for him. That'll let him cast a ton this battle. And then last but not least, his ability, Storm Demon. It's actually not an ability, it's a weapon. It shoots magic missiles, and it does pretty devastating damage. Let's see if we can catch the use of that this battle. So let's go ahead and get into the regular speed here. The Sisters of Avalorn are deciding to open up on the front lines. They're going to nuke these Skaven slaves. Perhaps not the best target. I mean, they do have limited ammunition after all. But I guess Triiari feels like he has range superiority, and the Skaven need to come to him. So he's content right now just to sit back and take the Warplock Jezzail fire, take the Plagueclaw Catapult fire, and expend his ammunition on the slaves. Eventually they will buckle. The Teeth Breakers here moving into position. They're getting a bit close. Their range isn't amazing, but look at that withering fire. Oh my god, the Sisters of Avalorn just got melted. It only killed 5 models, but did huge damage. And now, of course, they're going to get focus fired into oblivion. If they can get one more shot, that would be nice. They got Concealment Bomb to try and protect them. That's one of their abilities as well, but it's too little too late. They've just got hit with the Net of Amnatok, and they're going to rout before they get a chance to fire. Probably should have kept them in reserve a bit longer. I can understand the temptation to bring them forward, but with a range of only 145, I mean, they could have sat back here and just demolished the spearmen. But The Warp-like Jezzail are going to be doing huge work. Natty Bubo sharpshooters, basically an auto-include, I feel, in Skaven armies nowadays. Let's see how the Plagueclaw catapults are doing. Yeah. I was wondering why I wasn't seeing any big blobs of green arcing over the battlefield. And that's why it's so risky to take these against the Skaven, or against the High Elves, I should say, or the Dark Elves, because the Eagle Claw bolt throwers are so good at sniping. And just once again, beautiful execution using the multiple uses of Net of Amnatok to tie down high value targets and then to snipe them out. Here goes that brass orb on the Sisters of Avalorn, and it looks like it's doing a lot of damage. Warp Lightning coming down on these sisters. So Ikit Claw is kind of showing how he's such a versatile, dangerous opponent. But the Dwarf Menace now free from the Net of Amnatok, but it's just a little bit too late. The Sisters of Avalorn just do such great piercing damage. And what really is kind of like low-key one of the most important things about them is that their leadership is so high, you have to get rid of almost all of them in order to cause them to rout and stop firing. A Fiery Convocation went down there, just shy of the front line. The front line probably met in just a little bit of a weird spot. And there goes another Net of Amnatok. And I think that's going to be the end for Ikit Claw. You can watch him get gunned down as Teclis runs on foot across the battlefield. And there he goes with a massive explosion. And that feels like it'll probably be just about the end. Too many very high cost Skaven units are gone. No artillery left to speak of. The Lord's gone. The Natty Bubo sharpshooters are now in range. They're now visible. Probably because these spearmen are close enough. So everything is going to turn and focus on them, and that's just going to be a mass rout. A lot of eggs placed in one basket for the Skaven player there. Not bad play, necessarily, but it's very difficult to play around this style of build from Triiari. Just having the ability to lock down units with the Net of Amnatok, and then to snipe them with the super high DPS of the Sisters of Avalorn, there's not much you can do about that other than to play a much more evasive game. So I liked that he threw forward the Skaven Slave Spears. I like that. Perhaps hold the Clan Rats in even deeper reserve. Force them to sit and shoot at the slaves, you know. Then if he wants to advance, you push forward with the Clan Rats, and you can even move back. Don't hesitate to reset your artillery further back so that your opponent has to continuously move forward with their Eagle Claw bolt throwers. Don't hesitate to hold something as fragile as these Doom Flayers in reserve until much more ammunition is expended, until Clan Rats are tied up in some of these Lothern Sea Guard and things like that. I think just a bit more conservative play from the Skaven player might have resulted in a lot more kills on their units. And the Teeth Breakers, as beautiful as it was to watch them to shoot that first volley, sadly they just did not pay for themselves. And I think that's going to be kind of the story for these more expensive Regiment of Renown Skaven units, is that if you can get them in their ideal scenarios, Dwarf Thing Menace, you know, in the backs of a bunch of infantry, armored infantry, tearing them up, they'll look amazing. If you can park the Teeth Breakers like on a flank of a battlefield and protect them and just let them shoot all of their ammunition, they're going to get hundreds of kills. But they're so fragile in the meantime, and in practice, builds that are just very straightforward like this are going to always have the advantage over these types of builds that really focus around protecting these high value targets with very cheap infantry, and ultimately really not being able to succeed in that. But it was a good game, and I could see it going either way with just a few changes in circumstance. But yeah, thank you so much to Triiari for sending me this battle. Thank you to Technozan for being a good opponent. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett, and my channel is Good Talk Gaming. You can join me just about every day, especially for the foreseeable future for any type of multiplayer online content. I'm going to be looking to do some free-for-alls, some siege battles. I'm going to be trying to do some 2v2s and 3v3s. So I'm going to try to get a lot of the new units and the new content in, even if I have to play it all myself. But I'm sure I'll be able to get that to you just about every day on the channel. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate every single subscription that I get. And yeah, that's it. All right, guys, take care. And have fun playing the DLC. I'll see you in the next one.